My husband left me for a perfect younger Misstress, but when their baby was born, the doctor gasped at the face, and I finally revealed the dirty high school secret he never knew. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. You need to see this picture. It was 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, and my phone screen was the only light piercing the suffocating darkness of my bedroom. On the display was a photo sent by my ex-husband, Mitchell. It was a picture of his newborn daughter, born just hours ago to his perfect, wealthy, younger wife. But I wasn't cooing over the baby. I was laughing. I was laughing so hard that tears were streaming down my face, soaking into my pillowcase. Because the baby in that photo didn't look like the genetic perfection Mitchell had bragged about for months. The baby had a very specific nose. A nose like a hawk's beak, sharp and hooked. And a receding chin that looked like it was trying to retreat into the neck. I knew that face. I knew it better than anyone. And in that moment, I knew that the karma I had been waiting for hadn't just arrived, it had kicked down the door. But to understand why an innocent baby's face was the punchline to the darkest joke of my life, I have to take you back. Back to the night I thought my life was perfect, exactly 1 year ago. It was a blistering cold day in Chicago, the kind where the wind off the lake feels like it's peeling the skin off your face. But inside our colonial-style suburban home, everything was warm. The air smelled thick and sweet, a comforting blanket of Madagascar vanilla beans and rich cocoa powder. I had been on my feet for 6 hours, moving around the kitchen with the precision of a surgeon. It was June 12th. Our 8th wedding anniversary. I am a baker. Not professionally, at least not back then. I was an accountant by day, crunching numbers in a cubicle, but baking was my soul. It was my language of love. Mitchell loved my red velvet cake. He always said the store-bought ones were too dry, like eating red sawdust, but mine were moist, dense, and tasted like heaven. So, I had made a 3-layer masterpiece. I piped the cream cheese frosting into perfect rosettes, his favorite design. I had even tempered dark chocolate to write forever in elegant script on top. I set the dining table with the good china, the Lennox set we had received as a wedding gift from his aunt but were always too terrified to use. I polished the silverware until I could see my own reflection, a woman with hopeful hazel eyes and flour dusted on her cheek. I lit the tall taper candles at 6:30 sharp. I sat there, smoothing the linen tablecloth, waiting for the familiar hum of his BMW pulling into the driveway. Mitchell was a sales director for a high-end real estate firm in the city. He was always busy, always closing deals, always chasing the next big commission or the next step up the corporate ladder. I understood that. I supported that. I told myself that his ambition was for us, for our future, for the college fund of the children we hadn't had yet. 7 o'clock passed. The ice in the water glasses started to melt. 8 o'clock came and went. The candles were burning low, dripping wax onto my pristine tablecloth, looking like tears. I checked my phone for the 100th time. No missed calls. No texts. My stomach began to twist, a cold knot forming that had nothing to do with hunger. Mitchell had been distant lately, treating our home like a hotel and me like the maid, but he had never forgotten a major date. He prided himself on his memory, on his attention to detail. At 8:45, my phone finally buzzed. The sound echoed in the silent dining room like a gunshot. I grabbed it so fast I almost knocked over my wine glass. It was a text from Mitchell. Stuck with a client. Big crisis. Don't wait up. Go to sleep. I stared at the screen, reading those words over and over again until they blurred. No happy anniversary. No, I'm sorry, honey. No, I love you. Just a command. Go to sleep. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I blew out the candles. The smoke curled up, smelling like burnt wick and disappointment. I wrapped the cake, the beautiful, perfect cake that suddenly looked ridiculous to me, and shoved it into the fridge. I went upstairs to our bedroom, stripped off the silk dress I had bought specifically for tonight, and put on my old flannel pajamas. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind howl outside, feeling a creeping dread that this was the beginning of the end. The next morning, the silence in the house was deafening. Mitchell hadn't come home. His side of the bed was pristine, the sheets unwrinkled, mocking me. A panic started to rise in my chest, tight and suffocating. Had he been in an accident? Was he hurt? Was he lying in a hospital bed somewhere, unable to call me? I called his cell phone. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. By 10 in the morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I called in sick to my accounting job and drove to his office downtown. The roads were icy, slush splashing against my windshield, and my hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. I needed to see him. I needed to know he was okay. Maybe he had fallen asleep at his desk. He worked so hard. I would bring him a coffee. We would laugh about it. I walked into the sleek glass lobby of his firm. It smelled of expensive leather and ambition. The receptionist, a young girl named Sarah who usually greeted me with a bright, chatty smile, looked up. When she saw me, her face went pale. She stopped typing mid-sentence. "Valerie," she stammered, her voice dropping to a whisper. What are you doing here?" "I'm looking for Mitchell," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I felt like I was vibrating. "He didn't come home last night." I was worried. "Is he in a meeting?" Sarah looked down at her desk, rearranging papers nervously. She avoided my eyes. The silence stretched out, uncomfortable and loud. "Valerie," she said softly, finally looking up. "Mitchell isn't here." "Is he at a showing?" I asked, desperation creeping into my tone. "I can wait. I just need 5 minutes." "No," she said, and then she looked at me with an expression that I can only describe as pity. It was the kind of look you give a stray dog before you call animal control. "Mitchell doesn't work here anymore, Valerie. He resigned on Monday. He cleared out his office 2 days ago." I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me lightheaded. "Resigned? That's impossible. He loves this job. He's up for a promotion. We just talked about his quarterly bonus last week." "He resigned," Sarah repeated gently, as if explaining something to a child. "He told everyone he was moving. He said he was starting a new life in Boston with his fiancée." The world stopped spinning. The lobby sounds, phones ringing, heels clicking on marble, the hum of the elevator, faded into a dull roar. "Fiancé?" I whispered, the word tasting like poison. "I'm his wife. I am Mrs. Evans." Sarah didn't say anything. She just bit her lip and looked away. Before I could ask another question, before I could process the betrayal that was slicing through me like a serrated knife, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. It was a notification from our bank app. A priority alert. I looked down at the screen. The joint savings account. The account we had built for 8 years. The house fund. The future baby fund. Withdrawal, minus $145,000. Balance, $0. I don't remember the drive home. I remember the white knuckles of my hands on the steering wheel and the gray blur of the highway, but I don't remember navigating the traffic. My mind was racing, trying to piece together a puzzle I didn't even know existed. Resigned? Fiancé? Boston? Empty bank account? It felt like I had woken up in someone else's nightmare. When I pulled into the driveway, my heart stopped. His car was there. The silver BMW was parked haphazardly on the lawn, not in the garage, crushing the frozen grass. The trunk was popped open. I ran inside, slipping on the icy walkway. The front door was unlocked. Mitchell! I screamed his name. It wasn't a question, it was a demand. It was a primal scream. I found him in the bedroom. He was throwing clothes into 2 massive Louis Vuitton suitcases, luggage I didn't even know we owned. He wasn't folding them, he was just shoving them in, his expensive Italian suits, his silk ties, the cashmere sweaters I had bought him for Christmas. He looked up when I entered. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look sad. He looked annoyed, like I was a traffic jam making him late for a meeting. "You're home early," he said flatly, turning back to the closet to grab his collection of watches. "What is going on?" I asked, my voice trembling so hard it hurt. "I went to your office. Sarah said you quit. She said you were moving with your fiancé." Mitchell zipped up the first suitcase with a harsh, ripping sound. He set it on the floor and looked at me. His face, that handsome, chiseled face I had loved for over a decade, was twisted in a sneer I didn't recognize. "Well, Sarah always did have a big mouth," he said, checking his reflection in the mirror and adjusting his collar. "But she's right. I'm leaving, Valerie." "Leaving?" I stepped forward, reaching for his arm, needing to make contact, to make this real. "Mitchell, we've been married for 8 years. Yesterday was our anniversary. You can't just leave." "Who is she? What is happening?" He shook my hand off like I was dirty. "Don't touch me," he snapped. He walked over to the dresser and picked up his cologne, the Tom Ford bottle I had saved up to buy him. He tossed it into his bag. Then he turned to face me fully, his eyes cold and dead. "I can't do this anymore, Val. I'm suffocating. Look at this place." He gestured around our bedroom, which I kept spotless. "Look at you." I looked down at myself. I was wearing my winter coat over jeans and a sweater. I had a smudge of flour on my sleeve from yesterday's baking marathon that I hadn't noticed. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun. "What's wrong with me?" I whispered, tears welling up. "You smell like dough," he said, curling his lip in disgust. "You always smell like butter and flour and domesticity. It's pathetic. I'm a VP of sales, Valerie. I walk into rooms with millionaires. I need someone on my arm who matches my ambition. Someone who looks the part. You look like the help." "I support you," I cried, the injustice burning my throat. "I cook, I clean, I manage everything so you can focus on your career. I made you that cake." "The cake," he laughed, a cold, barking sound that made me flinch. "That's exactly the problem. You think a cake fixes everything. You think being a good little housewife is enough. It's not. Not for me. Not anymore." He walked up to me, invading my personal space, looming over me. "I met someone. Her name is Candace. And Valerie, she is everything you are not. She's sophisticated. She's wealthy. She's an heiress to the sterling fortune. And she is beautiful. Naturally, effortlessly beautiful. She doesn't have wrinkles starting around her eyes. She doesn't wear sweatpants. She is a goddess." Every word was a physical blow. "So you're leaving me for money and a pretty face?" "I'm leaving you because I deserve better," he said arrogantly, puffing out his chest. "Candace and I, we are genetic equals. We are the same breed. You're just plain. You're average. And I am done with average. I want a legacy. I want children who look like perfection, not this." He gestured vaguely at my face. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He tossed it onto the bed. It landed with a heavy thud that echoed in the silence. "Divorce papers," he said. "My lawyer drew them up. Don't make this difficult, Val. Just sign them. You keep the old furniture, I don't want any of this junk. I want a clean break." "You cleared the bank account," I said, the shock giving way to a burning anger. "I got the alert. You took everything. That was my money too." "I earned that money," he scoffed. "You barely make pennies selling those cookies to the neighbors. Consider the empty account my severance package for putting up with 8 years of boredom." He grabbed the handles of his suitcases. "I'm going to Boston. Candace is waiting. We have a flight to Paris tonight. Don't call me. Talk to my lawyer." He brushed past me, hitting my shoulder hard with his bag, knocking me back against the doorframe. I stood there, frozen, as I heard his heavy footsteps going down the stairs. The front door opened and slammed shut. The house shook. I heard the engine of the BMW roar to life, and then the sound of tires crunching on snow as he backed out. And then, silence. I was alone. In a house that suddenly felt huge and terrifyingly empty. The smell of the vanilla from the kitchen drifted upstairs, sickeningly sweet, mixing with the lingering scent of his expensive cologne. The cologne I had bought him. I looked at the envelope on the bed. Divorce. Just like that. 8 years of marriage, erased because I smelled like flour and didn't have a trust fund. For a long time, I just stood there. I couldn't move. My brain was trying to process the trauma, but my body had shut down. Eventually, my legs gave out, and I sat on the edge of the bed, right next to the divorce papers. The room was spinning. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I opened the envelope. It was all legal jargon, irreconcilable differences, dissolution of marriage, division of assets. But what caught my eye wasn't the legal text, it was the dates. The papers had been drafted 3 months ago. 3 months. He had been planning this for a quarter of a year. While I was planning our Thanksgiving dinner, ensuring his parents had the best seats, while I was buying him Christmas gifts, while I was planning this anniversary, he was sitting in a lawyer's office planning how to discard me. He had smiled at me across the table for 90 days, knowing he was going to destroy me. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to run to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection. Who was looking back at me? A woman who had been fooled. A woman who had been used. I needed to think. I needed to assess the damage. I went downstairs to his home office. He had cleaned up most of his personal items, his awards, his framed degrees, but Mitchell was arrogant, and arrogant people are often careless. He had left the shredder full, but the trash can wasn't entirely empty. I dug through the wastebasket. Underneath some crumpled drafts of resignation letters, I found a wad of receipts. My heart hammered against my ribs as I smoothed out the crumbled paper on the desk. First receipt, the Four Seasons Hotel in Chicago. A suite. 2 nights. Dated 3 weeks ago. That was the weekend he told me he was at a mandatory sales conference in Detroit. Second receipt, a luxury spa package for 2. The royal treatment. $600. Third receipt, this one made me stop breathing. It was from a high-end jeweler in the city. A diamond tennis bracelet. $5,000. Dated 2 weeks ago. $5,000. That was exactly the amount we had set aside for emergency house repairs. We had debated fixing the roof or upgrading the furnace. He had told me we needed to be frugal. He had scolded me for buying expensive vanilla extract. And then he took our safety net and draped it around another woman's wrist. I felt violated. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the financial abuse. I had been clipping coupons, buying generic brands, skipping vacations, and wearing clothes from 5 years ago to save that money. I thought we were a team building a future. In reality, I was the bank, and he was the robber. Then I saw something else in the pile of papers, a letter with a red stamp on it. I pulled it out. It was a notice from our landlord. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Evans, this letter confirms that you will be vacating the property by the end of the month as requested by Mr. Evans. The end of the month. That was in 2 weeks. I dropped the letter. I had no husband. I had no savings. And in 14 days, I would have no home. Mitchell hadn't just left me, he had scorched the earth behind him. He wanted to make sure I had nothing left to stand on. I walked into the kitchen, feeling like a ghost in my own life. The refrigerator hummed, indifferent to my collapse. I opened it and saw the red velvet cake. It sat there, perfect and red, a mockery of my devotion. I took the cake out. I didn't get a plate. I didn't get a fork. I sat on the cold kitchen floor, leaning against the cabinets, still in my coat. I pulled the plastic wrap off. I broke off a chunk of the cake with my hand and shoved it into my mouth. It tasted like ash. I tried to swallow, but I couldn't. I spat it out. I curled my knees to my chest and finally, the tears came. Not the polite, silent tears of a heartbroken wife, but guttural, ugly sobs that racked my entire body. I cried for the money. I cried for the wasted time. I cried for the embarrassment. I cried for the baby we never had. But mostly, I cried because I felt so stupid. Mitchell had called me plain and average. He said Candace was his genetic equal. I looked at my reflection in the oven door. My eyes were puffy, my hair was messy, and yes, I looked tired. But was I really so worthless? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the kitchen floor, my sadness began to harden. It cooled and solidified, like tempered chocolate. He wanted a clean break? He wanted to erase me? Fine. But he had forgotten one thing. I wasn't just a housewife who smelled like flour. I was the one who remembered everything. Including the things he tried so hard to forget. The next few days were a blur of packing boxes and panic attacks. Every time I taped up a box, I felt like I was sealing away a piece of my soul. I had to sell the furniture, the sofa we picked out together, the dining table, the lamps, just to have enough cash for a security deposit on a new place. I was sorting through the closet in the hallway, the one where we kept the old stuff we rarely looked at, when I found the shoebox. It was dusty, tucked behind the vacuum cleaner, labeled College Memories. I pulled it out and sat on the dusty floorboards. Inside were photos from 14 years ago. I picked up a picture dated 2008. It was of me and Mitchell at a tailgate party before a football game. I looked young, fresh-faced, smiling with a mouthful of braces. And next to me was Mitchell. But it wasn't the Mitchell who had just driven off in a BMW. The boy in the photo had a severe underbite. His chin was weak, receding back into his neck. But the most prominent feature was his nose. It was large, hooked, and crooked from a childhood break that never healed right. His skin was pockmarked with severe acne scars. In college, the frat guys called him Mitch the Beak. He was insecure back then. Painfully shy. He wouldn't talk to girls. He wouldn't speak up in class. He walked with his head down, hiding behind his hoodies. But I saw him. I saw his kindness, or what I thought was kindness. I saw his ambition. I loved him, not despite his looks, but because I thought he had a beautiful heart that was just trapped in an awkward shell. I flipped the photo over. Val and Mitch, forever, was scrawled in my handwriting. I closed my eyes, and the memory washed over me. The night he cried in my dorm room. It was our senior year. He had been rejected from 3 internships in a row. "It's my face, Val," he had sobbed, his shoulders shaking. "They take one look at me and they see a loser." Nobody trusts a guy who looks like a cartoon villain. I'm never going to make it in sales. I'm hideous. My heart had broken for him. I was working 3 jobs at the time. I was a barista at 5 a.m., a tutor in the afternoon, and I shelved books at the library at night. I was saving every penny for my own student loans and my dream of going to culinary school in Paris. I had $20,000 saved. It was my freedom money. But I loved him. So I made a choice. A choice that haunted me now. I took my savings, my dream fund, and I gave it to him. Fix it, I had told him, handing him the check. Do whatever you need to do to feel confident. I believe in you. It took me 2 years to save that money. And I spent it on him in 1 day. I paid for his rhinoplasty. I paid for the jaw reconstruction surgery to give him that strong, masculine chin. I paid for the laser treatments to smooth his acne scars. I paid for the veneers to fix his teeth. I remembered the weeks of recovery. I changed his bloody bandages. I blended his food because his jaw was wired shut. I held his hand when he was in pain. I told him he was beautiful even when his face was swollen and purple. Then came the day the bandages came off. He looked in the mirror and cried. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of awe. He looked like a different person. He looked like a movie star. And that was when everything changed. His confidence skyrocketed. He got the internship. Then the job. Then the promotions. He started dressing better, walking taller. He started looking at himself in every reflective surface, windows, spoons, car mirrors. And slowly, the shy, grateful boy I loved disappeared, replaced by the man who believed his own hype. He had reinvented himself using my money. My sweat. My sacrifice. And now? Now he was leaving me because I wasn't beautiful enough. He was leaving me for a woman he claimed was his genetic equal. I laughed out loud in the empty hallway. It was a hollow, bitter sound that bounced off the bare walls. Genetic equal, I whispered to the dust motes dancing in the light. If only Candace knew. If only she knew that the dashing, handsome man she was marrying was a masterpiece of plastic surgery, bought and paid for by the plain ex-wife he just discarded. He was a fraud. A handsome, well-dressed fraud. I looked at the photo one last time. I should have burned it. I should have shredded it. But I didn't. A strange instinct, a gut feeling deep in my stomach, told me to keep it. I slipped the photo into my purse. I stood up and wiped the dust off my jeans. The sadness was still there, heavy and suffocating, but the anger was growing hotter. He thought he could rewrite history. He thought he could just delete the version of himself he didn't like. I finished packing the box. I labeled it kitchen with a thick black marker. He could take the money. He could take the house. But he couldn't take my talent. And he certainly couldn't take the truth. I held on to that thought like a lifeline as I prepared to leave the only home I had known as a married woman. The new apartment was humble. That was the polite way to say it. In reality, it was a basement studio on the edge of the city, in a neighborhood Mitchell would have refused to drive through. It had pipes that rattled like a dying engine when the upstairs neighbors flushed the toilet, and a single window that looked out onto a brick wall and a dumpster. It was cold, damp, and smelled vaguely of mildew and old cabbage. It was a far cry from the 4-bedroom suburban house with the granite countertops and the walk-in pantry, but it was mine. And it cost a third of what I used to pay, which was good, because I was practically destitute. For the first week, I barely left the bed. I lay under my quilt, listening to the footsteps on the ceiling, feeling like a failure. I was 36, divorced, broke, and living in a basement. I felt like I had fallen down a well and no one knew I was there. But hunger has a way of motivating you. Real hunger, not just for food, but for survival. I checked my bank balance, $340. That was it. That was all I had to my name. I looked at my stand mixer, sitting on the tiny, scratched laminate counter. It was the only valuable thing I had kept. Okay, I said aloud to the empty room. Cry later. Bake now. I went to the grocery store and bought flour, yeast, butter, and sugar. I spent $40, over 10% of my net worth. I started baking. Not for Mitchell. Not for an anniversary. But for my life. I made scones. Blueberry lemon scones with a glaze that cracked perfectly when you bit into it. I made cinnamon rolls that were the size of softballs, dripping with cream cheese frosting. I made focaccia bread with rosemary and sea salt that smelled like an Italian summer. The smell of baking bread is powerful. It has a way of creeping through cracks and under doors. It masked the smell of mildew. It made the cold basement feel like a home. It wasn't long before there was a knock on my door. It was Mrs. Higgins, my landlady, a stern woman in her 70s who I thought hated me. "What is that smell?" she asked, her nose twitching. "Is it illegal?" I blinked. "It's cinnamon rolls." I gave her one. She took a bite, closed her eyes, and groaned. "Girl, this is better than sex. And I've had 2 husbands." She came back an hour later and ordered a dozen for her bridge club. She paid me $30. That was how it started. Mrs. Higgins told her friends. Her friends told their daughters. I started setting up a small table at the local farmers market on weekends. I called my stall the Basement Baker. It wasn't much money, just enough to keep the lights on and buy groceries, but it was something. It was dignity. One rainy Saturday, I was at the market, arranging a tray of croissants, trying to shield them from the drizzle with a tarp, when a familiar voice shrieked my name. "Valerie? Valerie Evans." I looked up, startled. Standing there, holding a designer umbrella, was Heidi. We had been best friends in high school, inseparable until college sent us in different directions. She looked fantastic, wearing a bright yellow raincoat that seemed to defy the gloomy weather. "Heidi!" I wiped my floury hands on my apron, feeling a sudden flash of shame about my appearance. Oh my God, hi. She didn't care about the flour. She hugged me tight, smelling of rain and expensive perfume. "I haven't seen you in ages." I heard about Mitchell. That scumbag. I winced. News travels fast in this town. "It's a small town disguised as a city," she said, rolling her eyes. She bought 2 croissants and leaned in, lowering her voice. "Listen, you look like you're surviving. But you need to get out. You need to have fun. You look like you're hiding." "I am hiding," I admitted. "I live in a basement, Heidi." "So what?" "You're making the best croissants I've ever tasted," she said, taking a bite. "Listen, our 20-year high school reunion is next Saturday. You have to come." "No," I shook my head immediately, panic rising. "Absolutely not. I am not going to a reunion to have everyone pity me." "Oh, look, there's Valerie, the one whose husband left her for an heiress." "No, thank you." "Screw pity," Heidi said fiercely. "You're talented. You're free. And besides..." She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I heard a rumor." "What rumor?" "About the woman Mitchell ran off with. Candace Sterling." My stomach tightened at the name. It felt like a punch. "What about her?" "Apparently, she's not a stranger. People are saying she's actually from around here. That she grew up just a few towns over." "Sterling?" I frowned. "I don't know any Sterlings." "That sounds like old money." "Exactly," Heidi winked. Maybe she wasn't a sterling back then. Come to the reunion, Val. Get dressed up. Remind everyone who you are. And maybe we can dig up some dirt. Come on, do it for teenage Valerie who didn't take crap from anyone. I looked at my reflection in the display case. I saw the dark circles under my eyes, but I also saw something else. A spark. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. I'll go. The reunion was held in the ballroom of the Marriott downtown. I spent 3 hours getting ready. I wore a simple black dress I had found at a thrift store for $15. I had tailored it myself to fit my curves, and honestly, with some red lipstick and my hair blown out in soft waves, I didn't look like the woman who cried on her kitchen floor. I looked formidable. Walking into that room was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It was loud, filled with bad DJ music from the 90s and the chatter of people comparing careers, hairlines, and divorces. I stuck close to Heidi, gripping my glass of cheap white wine like a weapon, trying to avoid eye contact with anyone who might ask, "So, what is Mitchell up to?" "Valerie?" A deep, warm voice came from behind me. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise. I turned around. Standing there was a man in a sharp gray suit that fit him perfectly. He had kind eyes, salt and pepper hair, and a smile that reached the corners of his eyes, creating lovely crinkles. "Russell?" I gasped. Russell Bennett. He had been our class president. The nice guy. The smart guy. We had been lab partners in chemistry, but we ran in different circles. He was popular but kind, I was quiet and bookish. "I wasn't sure if it was you," he smiled, and his eyes scanned my face, lingering for a moment. "You look beautiful, Valerie." I felt a blush heat up my cheeks, a sensation I hadn't felt in years. "I look like I'm trying to hide near the exit," I joked. He laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "Me too. I'm only here because my sister made me come. She said I needed to get out more." We started talking. It was effortless. I learned that Russell was an architect now. He had his own firm, designing sustainable homes. He had lost his wife to cancer 3 years ago and was raising a teenage son on his own. There was a sadness in his eyes that matched mine, a mutual understanding of what it means to lose your partner, even if in different ways. "And you?" he asked. "I remember you always brought the best brownies to study hall. Are you baking?" I hesitated. I felt a pang of shame about my current situation. I am. I'm starting a small business. Artisan breads and pastries. I sell at the market." "That's amazing," he said, and he sounded genuine. He didn't look down on me. "You always had a gift. I'm glad you pursued it. Too many people give up on the things that make them happy." He didn't ask about my husband. He didn't ask about my house. He asked about me. About my passion. For the first time in months, I felt seen. Not as Mitchell's accessory, but as Valerie. As the night went on, we moved to a quieter table in the corner, away from the dancing. We were laughing about old teachers when a group of women walked by. One of them was tipsy, holding a martini glass dangerously fast. "Oh my God, did you guys hear about Candy Miller?" the woman slurred loudly to her friends. I froze. My glass stopped halfway to my mouth. "Candy Miller?" I whispered to Russell. "Why does that name sound familiar?" "Candy?" Russell frowned, thinking. "Oh, right. Candy with the..." He stopped himself, too polite to finish. "With the teeth," I finished for him. "And the personality. Candy Miller. The girl who sat behind me in English Lit. She had severe buck teeth, a flat nose, and a terrible complexion. But what made her memorable wasn't her looks, it was her nastiness. She was mean. Bitter. She used to kick the back of my chair. She spread rumors that I stuffed my bra. She hated me because I was the pretty one back then. Yeah, the tipsy woman continued nearby. I heard she moved to New York, married some billionaire, and changed her name. Like, totally reinvented herself. She goes by Candace something now. Good for her, Russell said, shrugging. Everyone deserves a second chance. But my mind was racing. Candy Miller. Reinvented herself. Changed her name. Candace. And then I thought about what Mitchell had said. Candace is her name. She's naturally beautiful. A genetic masterpiece. A strange, cold feeling washed over me. It was ridiculous. It couldn't be. Candy Miller, the girl with the most unfortunate genes in our class, and Candace Sterling, the heiress? Valerie? You okay? Russell touched my arm gently. His hand was warm. I'm fine, I said, forcing a smile, but my brain was firing on all cylinders. Just a ghost from the past. Russell walked me to my car at the end of the night. The parking lot was cold, but I didn't feel it. I'd like to see you again, Russell said. I have a lot of clients who need catering for open houses. And honestly, I'd love to try your scones. And maybe take you to dinner? I looked at him. He was stable. Kind. Real. I'd like that, Russell. I drove home feeling a strange mix of hope and suspicion. Hope because of Russell. Suspicion because of a name I hadn't heard in 20 years. I was humming along to the radio as I unlocked the door to my basement apartment. The meeting with Russell had left me feeling lighter than air. Maybe there was life after Mitchell. Maybe there was something better. I threw my purse on the small table and my phone buzzed. I glanced at it. An email notification. From Mitchell Evans. Subject, proof. My good mood evaporated instantly. My heart started to pound. My thumb hovered over the screen. I shouldn't open it. I should delete it. I should block him. But curiosity is a poison we drink willingly. I opened the email. There was no text. Just a photo attachment. It was a wedding photo. Professional. Glossy. High definition. Mitchell was in a tuxedo, looking smug and polished, standing on what looked like a balcony in Paris. And next to him was the woman. Candace. I zoomed in. She was stunning. I had to admit it. Blonde hair cascading in perfect waves. A nose that was sculpted to perfection, dainty and upturned. High cheekbones that could cut glass. A dazzling, Hollywood smile with veneers so white they almost glowed. She looked like a Barbie doll come to life. And she was pregnant. Her hand rested possessively over a small baby bump under her lace gown. Proof, the subject line mocked me. Proof that he had upgraded. Proof that he had won. Proof that his genetic legacy was secured. I stared at her face. It was perfect. Too perfect. Like an AI-generated image of a woman. But then, I saw it. I zoomed in closer on her left ear, just below the lobe, near the jawline. It was tiny. Most people wouldn't notice it. But I have an accountant's eye for detail. There was a tiny, faint white scar. And right next to it, almost hidden by a diamond earring, was a small, dark mole in the shape of a crescent moon. My breath hitched. The air left my lungs. I knew that mole. Flashback to 11th grade English class. The girl sitting in front of me turned around to borrow a pen. She tucked her greasy hair behind her ear. I stared at the crescent-shaped mole on her neck, staring right at me. I remembered thinking it looked like a little moon. Candy Miller. No way, I whispered to the empty room. No freaking way. I looked at the photo again. The eyes, they were blue now, likely contacts, but they were the same shape, just widened surgically. The chin had been shaved down. The nose was completely different. The teeth were fake. Mitchell, the man who was obsessed with natural beauty, the man who left me because I wasn't genetically superior, had married the most manufactured woman in America. Candace Sterling wasn't an heiress born into beauty. She was Candy Miller, the girl who used to bully me. She had changed her name, changed her face, and probably bought a fake backstory to go with her new nose. I started to laugh. It was a low, incredulous chuckle that grew into a full-blown cackle. I laughed until my ribs hurt. Mitchell didn't know. There was no way he knew. He was too vain, too obsessed with surface appearances. He saw the shiny wrapper and never bothered to check the ingredients. He bragged about their superior genes. He bragged about the baby they were having. Oh, God. The baby. I stopped laughing abruptly. A sudden realization hit me like a freight train. Mitchell had had extensive plastic surgery. I paid for it. Candace had had extensive plastic surgery. Someone paid for it. Neither of them knew the truth about the other. They were two frauds who had fallen in love with each other's masks. They were living a lie within a lie. But biology? Biology doesn't lie. DNA doesn't care about how much money you spent on a rhinoplasty. DNA remembers the original nose. DNA remembers the original chin. DNA remembers the buck teeth. I looked at the pregnant belly in the photo. That poor child. That child was going to be a biological whistleblower. That child was going to expose everything without saying a word. I couldn't sleep. The adrenaline was pumping through my veins like caffeine. I needed to be sure. I needed concrete proof before I made a move. I dragged my old high school yearbook out from the bottom of a moving box labeled books. It smelled like mildew and old paper. I sat cross-legged on the floor and flipped through the pages, my fingers trembling. Junior year. Alphabetical order. M. There she was. Candy Miller. I stared at the black and white photo. The resemblance to the woman in the wedding photo was non-existent to the naked eye. But the bone structure of the forehead? The spacing of the eyes? And there, visible because her hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, the crescent mole. I took a picture of the yearbook photo with my phone. Then I opened my laptop. I started digging. I wasn't a detective, but I was a scorned ex-wife with an internet connection and a burning desire for truth, which is basically the same thing as the FBI. I searched for Candace Sterling. Tons of society pages, charity galas in New York, photos of her looking glamorous. Articles calling her a socialite and art curator. Then I searched for Candy Miller. Nothing recent. It was like she dropped off the face of the earth after graduation. I tried deeper. I searched public records. Name change petitions. It cost me $20 to access the database, but it was worth every penny. And there it was. A court document from New York, dated 10 years ago. Candace Miller petitioning to change her name to Candace Sterling. Sterling wasn't a family name. It wasn't an old money dynasty. It was just a name she picked because it sounded rich. She literally branded herself like silver. Then I struck gold. I found an old blog. It was archived on the Wayback Machine, a site that saves deleted internet pages. It was an anonymous blog called Beauty from Pain, active about 8 years ago. The author documented her journey of transformation. The posts were raw and painful. Surgery number 1, rhinoplasty. Finally getting rid of the beak. The swelling is awful, but it will be worth it. Surgery number 3, jaw contouring. Goodbye weak chin. Hello profile. Surgery number 8, breast augmentation and liposuction. Becoming the woman I was meant to be. No one will ever call me ugly again. The dates lined up perfectly with the years after high school. The location of the IP address? The same town Candy moved to. I read every word. I felt a strange mixture of pity and horror. She had hated herself so much that she carved herself into a new person. Just like Mitchell. I sat back in my chair, stunned. It was a double con. A perfect storm of deception. Mitchell thought he had married a natural beauty and a wealthy heiress. In reality, he had married a woman who had constructed herself out of silicone and debt, just like he had constructed himself out of my savings. And Candace? She probably thought she married a naturally handsome, successful businessman. She had no idea she was sleeping next to Mitch the Beak. They were perfect for each other. Two liars building a castle on a foundation of quicksand. But the storm was coming. The baby was due in a month. I looked at the two photos on my screen, Mitchell's old face and Candy's old face. I opened Photoshop. I put the two old photos side by side. I started to combine their features. The hooked nose of the father. The weak chin of the mother. The buck teeth. The acne-prone skin. The resulting composite image was unfortunate. It wasn't just average. It was exactly what both of them had spent thousands of dollars running away from. I closed my laptop. I wasn't going to tell him. Not yet. Why interrupt an enemy when they are making a mistake? I would wait. I would bake my bread, I would date the lovely architect Russell, and I would wait for Mother Nature to deliver the punchline. And oh, was it going to be a good one? You might think that a man who had successfully upgraded his life, married a wealthy heiress, and secured his so-called genetic legacy would be too busy popping champagne to worry about his ex-wife baking muffins in a basement. You would think Mitchell Evans would have erased me from his mind just as easily as he erased his old nose. But you would be wrong. Because for a narcissist like Mitchell, it is not enough to win, he needs to know that you have lost. And seeing me survive, seeing me claw my way back from the edge of homelessness, was an insult to his victory. It started about a month after the reunion. My baking business, which I officially named the Rustic Crumb, was beginning to find its footing. It wasn't a glamorous empire yet. It was just me, a used commercial oven I rented in a shared kitchen space downtown, and a lot of sleepless nights. Russell had been instrumental in this. He introduced me to real estate agents who needed catering for open houses, and suddenly, my rosemary focaccia and lavender scones were the talk of the local property scene. I was happy. For the first time in a year, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. But Mitchell was watching. It began on a Tuesday morning, a day that started with a thunderstorm that rattled the windows of the shared kitchen. I was in the middle of laminating dough for croissants, a process that requires patience and a cool temperature. I was covered in flour, listening to jazz, feeling a sense of rhythm returning to my life. Then, the heavy metal door slammed open. It wasn't a customer. It was a man in a beige trench coat, holding a clipboard, with a badge hanging from his neck that read City Health Department. He didn't look like a civil servant, he looked like a hired gun. "Valerie Evans?" he barked, his voice echoing off the stainless steel appliances. "Yes." I wiped my hands on my apron, my heart doing a nervous flutter. "Can I help you?" "We received a formal complaint regarding this operation," he said, not making eye contact, his pen hovering over his clipboard like a weapon. "Allegations of unpasteurized dairy usage, improper storage of raw eggs, and rodent infestation." I felt the blood drain from my face. Rodents? That is absolutely impossible. I scrub this kitchen with bleach every single night. You can eat off these floors. "We'll see," he sneered. "Step aside." For the next 2 hours, he terrorized my workspace. He tore open bags of expensive imported flour. He jammed a thermometer into my resting dough so aggressively he ruined the proofing. He pulled the refrigerator out from the wall, shining a flashlight into corners, clearly desperate to find a single dropping, a single cockroach, anything to shut me down. I stood in the corner, shaking. I knew I was clean, but I also knew that if he wanted to find a violation, he could invent one. He could red tag my equipment. He could freeze my operations. If I couldn't bake for the 3 open houses booked this weekend, I would lose my contracts. I would be unable to pay the rent for this kitchen. I would be finished. After what felt like an eternity, he turned to me, looking disappointed. "Well, Ms. Evans," he said, sounding almost annoyed that he hadn't found a rat king living in my oven. "It appears you are compliant. For now." He ripped a pink carbon copy off his clipboard and shoved it at me. "But consider this a warning. We will be watching." The complaint was very detailed. I looked at the form. The name of the complainant was redacted, but the description of the unsanitary baker used a very specific phrase: "The operator appears unkempt and smells of stale yeast." Unkempt. I froze. That was Mitchell's word. It was his favorite insult. He used to tell me I looked unkempt if I had a single flyaway hair. He told me I looked unkempt when I wore sweatpants. I gripped the paper until it crumpled. He had called the city on me. He wasn't just content with leaving me, he wanted to starve me. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I had survived his petty strike. But 2 days later, the real blow landed. I was at the kitchen, packing up orders, when the landlord of the building walked in. He was a nice guy, usually jovial, but today he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Valerie," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "We need to talk about your lease." "Is everything okay?" I asked, handing him a fresh cinnamon roll. "Did the inspection worry you?" I passed with flying colors. "It's not the inspection," he said, refusing the pastry. "I received an offer on the building. A cash offer. Above market value. The new owner wants the space cleared out for a private venture. They want the kitchen for personal use." "Who?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who bought the building?" "A holding company," he said. "Sterling Real Estate Holdings." Sterling. The room spun. Candace's family. Mitchell was using his new wife's money to buy the building I worked in, just to evict me. It was a level of vindictiveness that was almost impressive in its cruelty. "How long do I have?" I asked. 30 days, he said softly. "I'm sorry, Valerie. It's just business." It wasn't business. It was war. I walked out of the kitchen into the rain. I felt small. I felt defeated. How could I fight people with that kind of money? They could buy the ground I stood on just to pull it out from under me. I called Russell. I was crying so hard I could barely speak. He picked me up 10 minutes later, his face set in a hard line. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't tell me it would be okay. He drove me to a construction site on the edge of the trendy artistic district. "Look at that," he said, pointing to a dilapidated brick storefront with boarded-up windows. "It's a dump," I sniffled. "It's my building," Russell said. "I bought it 5 years ago intending to turn it into an office, but I never got around to it. It has good bones, Val. It has a gas line. It has water." He turned to me, taking my cold hands in his warm ones. "Mitchell thinks he can buy your failure. But he forgot that you have people who actually care about you. He can buy the building you rent, but he can't buy your talent. Let's renovate this. Let's build you a bakery that is yours. A place he can never kick you out of." I can't afford a renovation, I whispered. You pay for the materials when you can, Russell said firmly. I provide the labor. I provide the design. We do this together. We build something real. And right there, in the front seat of his truck, with the rain hammering on the roof, I realized that Mitchell had done me a favor. He tried to bury me, but he didn't realize I was a seed. And he didn't realize that by pushing me out, he pushed me right into the arms of a man who wanted to build me a castle, not lock me in a tower. The next 3 months were a blur of sawdust, paint fumes, and exhaustion. But it was a good exhaustion. Russell and I worked side by side every evening. We tore down drywall, we sanded floors, we installed a beautiful vintage oven I found at an auction. We were building the rustic crumb brick by brick. And as the bakery took shape, so did our relationship. It wasn't built on grand gestures or expensive jewelry, it was built on shared pizza on the floor at midnight, on laughter when we painted each other's noses by accident, on the quiet trust of two people creating a future. But the ghost of my past was still haunting the periphery. One afternoon, about 2 weeks before our grand opening, I was alone in the bakery, testing a new recipe for lavender lemon loaf. The door was unlocked because the contractor was coming in and out. I heard the door open and the click-clack of expensive heels on the unfinished hardwood floor. "We're not open yet," I called out from the back, wiping flour from my cheek. "Oh, I know. I just wanted to see what all the fuss was about." The voice was high, airy, and dripping with condescension. I froze. I knew that voice. I walked out to the front counter. Standing there, looking like she had just stepped out of a Vogue photoshoot, was Candace. She was visibly pregnant now, heavily so. She wore a tight white dress that showed off her bump, a camel-colored cashmere coat draped over her shoulders, and sunglasses that probably cost more than my oven. She took off her sunglasses and looked around the dusty, half-finished shop with a sneer of distaste. "So," she said, her blue eyes scanning me up and down. "This is the little project Mitchell told me about. It's quaint. Very rustic." She made rustic sound like dirty. "Can I help you, Candace?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, though my hands were clenching into fists behind the counter. "I just wanted to offer my condolences," she said, touching her perfect, surgically sculpted nose. "Mitchell told me about the eviction. It's so sad when people overextend themselves. If you need a job, my family's estate is looking for a new kitchen maid. You seem suited for that kind of work." She smiled. It was a dazzling, blinding smile of porcelain veneers. I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the faint scar behind her ear that I had spotted in the photo. I saw the tension in her jaw. And I saw something else, fear. She was terrified. She was standing in my unfinished bakery, heavily pregnant, trying to assert dominance because deep down, she knew she was a fraud. "I'm fine, Candace," I said. "And I don't need charity. Especially not from someone who lives in a house of cards." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? You heard me. You look tired, Candace. Is the pregnancy hard? Or is it exhausting keeping up the mask 24/7? She took a step back, her hand instinctively going to her throat, covering the spot where her old jawline used to be. "You're just jealous," she hissed. "I have everything. I have the man, the money, and the baby. And you have flour." "I have the truth," I said simply. "And trust me, flour rises. Lies don't." She turned on her heel and stormed out, almost tripping over a paint can. I watched her go, feeling a strange sense of calm. She was brittle. One tap, and she would shatter. I went back to checking on Mitchell's social media that night. I needed to see if the cracks were showing there too. His feed was still a shrine to perfection. Post number 1, a photo of the nursery. "Ready for our princess. Imported Italian crib." Post number 2, a photo of Candace in the lavender field. My goddess. But then I saw the latest post. A video of a 4D ultrasound. I clicked on it. Usually, 4D ultrasounds are the pride and joy of expectant parents. They show the baby's face in golden detail, the nose, the lips, the chubby cheeks. But this video was strange. It was short, barely 5 seconds. It showed a foot. It showed a hand. It showed the curve of the spine. But every time the camera panned towards the face, the video cut away or blurred out. The caption read, "She's a little camera shy. Keeping her beauty a surprise for the world. #mysterygirl #genetic jackpot." I sat on the couch with Russell, showing him the phone. Camera shy? I scoffed. Russell, look at this. Who posts a 4D ultrasound and hides the face? The whole point is to see the face. Russell frowned, studying the video. Maybe the baby was turned away? Maybe she had her hands over her face? No, I said, rewinding the video. Look at the edge of the frame here. Just for a split second. Before the cut. We paused it. There, in the blurry corner, was a profile view. It wasn't the cute button nose of a Gerber baby. It was a sharp, prominent hook. That's not a button nose, Russell whispered. That, I said, feeling the adrenaline spike, is Mitchell's nose. His real nose. The one he paid $20,000 to chop off. He knows, Russell said, looking at me. He must have seen it during the scan. He saw it, I agreed. And he's terrified. He's hiding it. He's calling it camera shy because he can't admit that his genetic jackpot is actually a genetic receipt. The baby was due in 3 days. The clock was ticking. And Mitchell was holding his breath, hoping that somehow, miraculously, the baby would come out looking like the Instagram version of his life. He had no idea that biology was about to expose him in the most brutal way possible. The baby didn't come in 3 days. She took her time, as if she knew her arrival would burn the kingdom down. She arrived 10 days late, on a night when Chicago was being battered by an early winter storm. I was awake at 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. The wind was howling around my apartment building, shaking the window panes. I had a feeling. A deep, primal instinct that something was happening. I was sitting at my kitchen table, going over invoices for the bakery, when my phone lit up. The name on the screen made my breath catch in my throat. Mitchell. He hadn't called me since the day he left. He communicated only through lawyers and emails. Why was he calling me in the middle of the night? I let it ring 3 times. My hand hovered over the phone. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to let him drown in whatever crisis he was in. But curiosity is a powerful drug. And I knew, deep down, what this call was about. I slid the bar to answer. Hello? Valerie? The voice on the other end was unrecognizable. It wasn't the smooth, arrogant baritone of the VP of sales. It was high, thin, and laced with a panic so raw it was almost contagious. He sounded like he was hyperventilating in a closet. Mitchell? I asked, keeping my voice cool. It's 2 a.m. Why are you calling me? She's born, he stuttered. The baby. She's here. Okay, I said slowly. Congratulations. I assume you're calling to brag? Did she come out holding a trust fund? No, he hissed, and I heard him choke back a sob. Valerie, you have to listen to me. Something is wrong. Something is terribly, horribly wrong. Is she sick? I asked, feeling a genuine spike of concern. No matter how much I hated Mitchell, I didn't wish harm on a child. Is she in the NICU? Is she breathing? She's healthy, he whispered, the word sounding like a curse. The doctors say she's perfectly healthy. 10 fingers, 10 toes, APGAR score perfect. But, God, Val, she's ugly. The silence that followed was heavy. Excuse me? I asked, blinking into the darkness of my kitchen. She's hideous, Valerie. His voice cracked, rising in hysteria. I don't understand. Candace is beautiful. She has that tiny nose, that perfect chin. I look good. We are attractive people. But this baby, she looks like a goblin. She has this huge, hooked nose. It's massive. And her chin, it's barely there. Her eyes are beady and close together. I bit my lips so hard I tasted iron. He was describing himself. He was describing the face I had kissed 1,000 times in our college dorm room. He was describing the face he had hated so much he tried to slice it off. Newborns are often swollen, Mitchell, I said, playing the voice of reason. They look squashed from birth. It changes. No, he cried. This isn't swelling. This is bone structure. I'm looking at her right now through the nursery window. She looks like a witch. And she doesn't look like Candace. Not one bit. Candace is a delicate flower. This baby is, coarse. How is Candace taking it? I asked. She won't hold her, Mitchell whispered, the horror in his voice intensifying. She took one look at the baby when they put her on her chest and she started screaming. She screamed, "Take it away. That's not mine." She's hysterical, Val. She's sedated now. She thinks the hospital switched the babies. Did they? No. I was there. I watched the whole thing. There was no switch. That thing came out of her. He paused, and his voice dropped to a dangerous, poisonous growl. Valerie, I think Candace cheated on me. My heart hammered against my ribs. What makes you say that? Because there is no way this child came from me and her, he said. Two genetically superior people don't make this. She must have slept with some ugly, troll-like man. Maybe for money? Maybe an old ex? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. What are you going to do? I already did it, he said. I swabbed the baby's cheek while the nurse wasn't looking. I have a buddy who runs a private lab downtown. I'm driving the sample over there right now. I need a paternity test. If this kid isn't mine, I'm going to destroy her. I'm going to leave her with nothing. I sat there in the dark, clutching the phone. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. He suspected infidelity because he couldn't recognize his own original face. He had erased his past so thoroughly that he didn't even recognize it when it was staring up at him from a plastic bassinet. Mitchell, I said softly. You need to calm down. Wait for the test. I can't calm down, he shouted, and I heard a car horn honk in the background. My life is over. I posted about the legacy. I promised the world perfection. How can I show this baby on Instagram? People will laugh at me. My clients will laugh at me. People will laugh at me. That was it. That was the core of his soul. Not that his child was unloved, not that his wife was distraught, but that he would be embarrassed. Go get the test, Mitchell, I said. Call me when you get the results. Why are you picking up? He asked suddenly, suspicious. Why are you listening to me? Because, I said, a small, cold smile playing on my lips. I want to know the truth too. I'm very invested in your legacy. I hung up. I didn't go back to sleep. I went to the kitchen and made a pot of coffee. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I had created months ago. The folder named the receipt. The weapon was loaded. The target was painting a bullseye on his own forehead. I was just waiting for him to pull the trigger. The next 24 hours were excruciating. I went to the bakery, but I was on autopilot. I overproofed the sourdough. I burned a batch of cookies. My mind was entirely focused on that private lab downtown and the piece of paper that was about to shatter Mitchell's world. I told Russell everything. We sat in the back of the bakery, surrounded by sacks of flour. So he really thinks she cheated? Russell asked, shaking his head in disbelief. He can't see the resemblance? He can't, I explained. He has dysmorphia about his past self. He has mentally blocked out what he used to look like. He sees himself as the man in the mirror now. He thinks he was born this way. And Candace? She's the same, I said. She probably thinks the baby looks like Mitchell's ugly ancestors. They are both blaming each other's gene pool, not realizing they are looking at a mirror. What happens when the test comes back positive? Russell asked. Then the walls close in, I said. He will have no explanation. He will be forced to face the fact that he created this child. And that's when I open the door and show him the monster. At 6 p.m., my phone rang. Mitchell. I answered on the first ring. I didn't even say hello. Well, it's mine, he said. His voice sounded dead. Hollow. Like a man walking to the gallows. The test came back. 99.99% probability of paternity. She's mine. Okay, I said. So Candace didn't cheat. I don't understand, he whispered, and I could hear the sound of him pacing on pavement. If she's mine, and Candace is the mother, and we are both beautiful, why? Why does she look like that? Did something go wrong in the womb? Is it a mutation? Val, she has this nose. It curves down like a hawk. It's huge. Mitchell, I said, keeping my voice steady. Where are you right now? I'm in the hospital parking lot. I can't go back up there. Candace is threatening to sue the hospital for swapping babies, even though the DNA proves it's ours. Her parents are there. They're looking at me like I polluted their bloodline. Her father asked me if there was deformity in my family history. Deformity, I repeated. That's a harsh word. It's the truth, he cried. I look at that baby and I feel sick. I feel like I'm looking at a stranger. A stranger who ruined my life. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment. He was broken. He was confused. He was begging for an answer. Mitchell, I said, my voice dropping an octave. You're looking for an explanation. You're looking for a reason why two perfect people created a child that doesn't fit the picture. Yes. Do you know something? Val, please. You've been acting strange. If you know something, tell me. I paused. I let the silence stretch out, creating a vacuum that he was desperate to fill. I sat there, gripping the phone, looking at the blinking cursor on my laptop screen where the send button waited. I held the key to destroying his entire reality in my hand. It's a heavy thing, holding the truth when everyone else is living a lie. If you are listening to this and you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough because of how you looked, or if you've ever been betrayed by someone who valued superficial things over your heart, I need you to do something for me. Pause this video right now. Scroll down and hit that like button. Then, in the comments, type the number 1. Just the number 1. Let me know you're here. Let me know you're standing with me in this kitchen, waiting to drop the hammer on a man who thought he could buy perfection. Your support tells me I'm not crazy for doing what I'm about to do. Type 1 so I can see my army. Are you ready? Because I didn't just tell him. I showed him. Mitchell, I said into the phone. Check your email. I just sent you something. My email? What? Just open it. It explains everything. I heard the rustling of clothes, the beep of a car unlocking as he presumably got his iPad or checked his phone. I see it, he said. Subject, the genetic receipt. What is this? Open it, I commanded. It's downloading, he said. Valerie, what is this? Is this some kind of sick Joe? He stopped. The line went dead silent. The kind of silence that happens when a bomb goes off and sucks all the air out of the room. Mitchell? I asked innocently. No answer. Just the sound of jagged, panicked breathing. Mitchell, are you looking at the photos? Where? He choked out, his voice sounding like he had been punched in the throat. Where did you get these? Part 13, The Revelation and the Genetic Receipt. I found them in a box you left behind, I said calmly. The box you were too busy packing your Armani suits to notice. The box of the life you threw away. On his screen, Mitchell was looking at a side-by-side comparison that I had meticulously created. On the left, a photo of Mitchell at age 18. The real Mitchell. The Mitchell with the hooked nose, the weak chin, the bad skin. The Mitchell I had loved and paid to fix. On the right, a photo of Candy Miller at age 17. The girl with the buck teeth, the flat nose, the receding chin, and the crescent mole on her neck. And in the middle? I had pasted the photo of the newborn baby he had sent me earlier. It was a perfect match. The baby had his original nose. The baby had her original chin. It was a biological map of their true history. It was undeniable. You see, Mitchell, I said, my voice clear and sharp, cutting through his panic. You spent so much time obsessing over genetics. You talked about genetic equals. You talked about breeding a legacy. But you forgot one very simple, very scientific fact. What? He wheezed. Who is that girl on the right? That ugly girl? That, I said, savoring the words, tasting the justice in them, is your wife. That is Candace Sterling. Only back then, her name was Candy Miller. She went to our high school. She sat behind me in English class. She used to kick my chair. No, he gasped. No, that's impossible. Candace she's naturally beautiful. She told me. She swore, she showed me photos of her mother. She lied, I cut him off. Just like you lied. You see, Mitchell, you both did the exact same thing. You hated who you were, so you paid a surgeon to carve you into someone else. I paid for your face, remember? $20,000 of my savings. And Candace? Someone paid for hers too. Rhinoplasty, chin implant, veneers, jaw contouring, brow lift. She's a masterpiece of medical science, just like you. Candy Miller, he whispered, the name sounding foreign on his tongue. The girl everyone made fun of? The girl they called the rat? The very same, I said. You two are perfect for each other. You're both frauds. You fell in love with a mask. You married a reflection of your own vanity. I heard a sound that sounded like a sob, or maybe a retch. He was physically ill. But here is the kicker, Mitchell, I continued, unable to stop the flow of truth. You can slice off a nose. You can shave down a jawbone. You can cap your teeth. But you cannot scrub your DNA. Your genes? They don't know you had surgery. They don't know you're a VP of sales or an heiress. They just know the code they were born with. The baby. He stammered. The baby is innocent, I said fiercely. She is the only honest thing in your entire life right now. She is showing the world exactly who her parents really are. She has your nose, Mitchell. The nose you were so ashamed of that you let me spend my life savings to chop it off. And she has Candace's chin. The chin she changed her name to hide. Oh my God, he moaned. Oh my God. I'm ruined. You wanted a legacy? I asked. You got one. That baby is your legacy. She is the truth you tried to bury. Does Candace know? He asked, his voice trembling with fear. Does she know about me? About you? I asked. I doubt it. Does she know you used to look like Mitch the Beak? Does she know her husband is a plastic creation funded by his ex-wife? Probably not. Just like you didn't know she was Candy Miller. You conned each other. She tricked me, he shouted suddenly, anger replacing the shock. She lied to me. She trapped me. She told me she was pure. She told me her family had good stock. I laughed. A loud, sharp laugh. And you told her you were a prize. Pot, meat kettle. I have to go, he said, sounding frantic. The car door slammed. Go where? I asked. Back upstairs? To look at your wife and realize she's a stranger? To look at your daughter and realize she's the only real thing you have? I'm going to confront her, he snarled. I'm going to make her pay. She defrauded me. Good luck with that, I said. And Mitchell? What? Happy fatherhood. I hung up the phone. I sat there in the silence of my kitchen, expecting to feel triumphant. And I did, partially. But mostly, I felt a deep, overwhelming exhaustion. It was done. The truth was out. The bomb had detonated. Now, all that was left was to watch the fallout. I didn't need to be in that hospital room to know what happened next. News like that doesn't stay contained. It explodes. It travels through nurses, through security guards, through the whispers of a small town. According to the grapevine, which in our town was faster than fiber optic internet, Mitchell stormed back up to the VIP maternity suite like a man possessed. He didn't take the elevator, he ran up the stairs. He didn't just confront Candace, he annihilated her. He threw his phone at her while she was still in her hospital bed, showing her the photo of Candy Miller. He screamed so loud that patients on the floor below heard him. He called her a fraud, a liar, a trap. He yelled about her defective genes in front of her parents, the wealthy Sterlings. But here was the twist I hadn't fully anticipated: the Sterlings didn't know either. Apparently, Candace had told her parents she needed the surgeries for medical reasons: a deviated septum from a fall, jaw alignment issues for TMJ, corrective dental work for health. She had downplayed the cosmetic nature of it. She had conned her own parents into funding her new face. When Mitchell laid it all out, the name change, the secret blog, the total reconstruction, the room imploded. Candace, fueled by postpartum hormones, pain, and humiliation, fought back. She didn't cower. She attacked. She screamed about his nose. She screamed about his fake chin. You think you're some prize? She reportedly shrieked, ripping the fore out of her arm in her fury. Valerie told me everything. She told me she paid for your face. You're just a broke salesman living on credit. You have more plastic in your face than I do. Wait. Valerie told me? I hadn't told her. But then I realized, that day in the bakery. When I told her I have the truth. She must have dug into him. She must have found something, or maybe she just guessed. Or maybe Mitchell, in his arrogance, had let something slip. The nurse's station was abuzz. Code Gray, security threat, was called. The security guards had to physically separate them. Mitchell was escorted out of the hospital, still screaming about annulments and fraud. Candace was left sobbing in a room full of expensive flowers she couldn't smell because her nose was congested from crying, holding a baby she couldn't look at. The perfect family had lasted exactly 6 hours. The next day, the social media purge began. It was brutal and swift. The nursery photos? Deleted. The maternity shoot? Gone. Mitchell's profile status changed from married to nothing. His bio changed from building a legacy to blank. And the baby? The innocent little girl named Bella? She was in the nursery, being cared for by nurses, while her parents declared war on each other in lawyers' offices. Heidi called me 2 days later. Val, it's a bloodbath. Mitchell is suing for fraud, claiming she tricked him into marriage under false pretenses. Candace is countersuing for emotional distress and defamation. They are fighting over who has to take custody, not who gets to. Neither of them wants the baby. They are treating that child like evidence in a crime scene. That's heartbreaking, I said, and I meant it. Poor kid. She didn't ask for any of this. Yeah, Heidi said. But you know what the worst part is? Candace's mom, Mrs. Sterling? She was overheard asking the doctor how soon a child can have corrective rhinoplasty. She asked if they could do it before she starts preschool so she doesn't embarrass the family. I felt sick. They hadn't learned a thing. They were just looking for the next fix. The next surgery. The next lie to cover up the truth. They were willing to carve up a child just to maintain their delusion. 3 months passed. The snow had melted, and spring was trying to break through in Chicago. I was in my new bakery, the Rustic Crumb. It was fully open now, and it was beautiful. The exposed brick walls, the smell of fresh sourdough, the line of customers out the door. It was everything I had dreamed of. I was behind the counter, boxing up a dozen lavender cupcakes for a regular customer, when the bell above the door chimed. The crowd parted. People stopped talking. The atmosphere shifted from warm to icy in a second. Standing there was Mitchell. But not the Mitchell of old. Not the Mitchell in the bespoke suit. The Mitchell who stood in my bakery looked like a shadow. His expensive coat was wrinkled and stained. He hadn't shaved in days, and the stubble revealed the faint, pitted scars of his old acne that the stress was bringing back out. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked average. He looked tired. He looked broke. He walked up to the counter. He didn't look at the customers staring at him. He only looked at me. Valerie, he croaked. His voice was raspy. Mitchell, I said, wiping my hands on my apron. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel love. I didn't even feel hate. I just felt pity. He was small. What do you want? I'm busy. Can we talk? He asked. Please. Just for a minute. I have nowhere else to go. Russell appeared from the back kitchen. He was holding a tray of hot croissants. He saw Mitchell, set the tray down, and came to stand next to me. He didn't say anything, just crossed his arms. A silent sentinel. A wall of protection. Mitchell looked at Russell, tall, rugged, naturally handsome, covered in honest flour, and shrank a little. Talk here, I said. I have nothing to say to you in private. Mitchell looked around at the listening customers. He licked his dry lips. I made a mistake, he whispered. A huge mistake. Candace, she's crazy. Her family is trying to bankrupt me. They fired me from the firm. They blacklisted me in the city. I have nothing, Val. I'm living in a motel on the highway. And? I asked, cold as ice. What does that have to do with me? And? I miss you, he said, trying to summon that old charm, but it fell flat. It was pathetic. I miss us. I miss this. He gestured vaguely at the bakery. I miss real food. I miss a real home. You were the only one who loved me for me. You fixed me, Val. Remember? You made me. I paid for your surgery, I corrected him loud and clear. I didn't make you. You made yourself into a monster. I can change, he begged, reaching across the counter, his hand shaking. Take me back. We can start over. I'll be better. I swear. We can raise the baby together. You always wanted a kid, right? We can get custody. Candace doesn't want her. You can fix her too. The bakery went silent. You could hear a pin drop. Fix her? I repeated, my voice trembling with rage. You want me to take you back so I can raise your daughter and fix her? You want me to play plastic surgeon for an infant? She needs help, he pleaded, tears leaking from his eyes. She looks like I used to. I can't look at her without seeing him. But you know how to handle that. You saw past it with me. You have a big heart, Val. Please. I looked at him. I really looked at him. And I realized that the ugly boy I had loved in college was gone. He hadn't been fixed, he had been destroyed by his own vanity. Mitchell, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I didn't love you because I wanted to fix you. I loved you because I thought you were broken but kind. But you weren't broken. You were just rotten. And plastic surgery doesn't fix a rotten soul. I pointed to the door. Get out, I said. Val, please. I have no money. I haven't eaten. Get out. Russell stepped forward, his voice booming like thunder. Mitchell flinched. He looked around the room, seeing the judgment in everyone's eyes. He saw the success I had built without him. He saw the love I had found without him. He saw that I was the one shining, and he was the one in the dark. He hung his head. He turned around and walked out into the slushy snow, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. The divorce between Mitchell and Candace was finalized a year later. It was one of the messiest, most expensive, and most public divorces in the county. Mitchell lost everything. The job, the reputation, the money. He moved back to his parents' house in Florida, working as a car salesman at a used lot. I heard he spends most of his paycheck on alimony and child support for a child he refuses to visit. He tells people he never wanted kids. He tells people he was trapped. Candace kept the baby, but mostly out of spite and to maintain the appearance of a devoted mother for the social pages. But she never posts photos of Bella's face. Never. If she does post a photo, there's always a heavy filter, or a giant bow covering her forehead, or the baby is facing away. Rumor has it that Bella is being raised by nannies. Candace is already consulting surgeons in Brazil for corrective procedures the minute the child stops growing. She treats her daughter like a renovation project, not a human being. She dresses her in expensive clothes to distract from her face. It breaks my heart. I often think about that little girl. The innocent victim of two people who hated themselves so much they tried to erase their own existence. I hope, I pray, that Bella grows up with a rebellious spirit. I hope she looks in the mirror and loves that hooked nose because it's hers. I hope she finds someone who loves her for it, not despite it. But I can't save her. I tried to save her father, and look where that got me. I can only save myself. 2 years after the genetic receipt email, I stood in a garden behind the rustic crumb. It was spring, and the world was in bloom. I was wearing a white dress. Not a designer gown that cost thousands, but a vintage lace dress that Russell and I found at an estate sale. It smelled of lavender and sunshine. Russell was standing under a wooden archway he had built himself. He looked handsome, not in a polished, plastic way, but in a real way. He had laugh lines around his eyes. He had gray in his beard. He looked like safety. He looked like home. "I do," I said. "I do," he said. We kissed, and the small crowd of friends and family cheered. Heidi was my maid of honor, sobbing loudly into a handkerchief. We didn't have a red velvet cake. I was done with red velvet. We had a tower of cinnamon rolls and a rustic carrot cake with uneven frosting that tasted like joy. My life now isn't perfect in the way Mitchell wanted perfection. My hands are rough from flour. I have a few more gray hairs. We drive a sensible car with a dent in the bumper. But I have a business that I built with my own 2 hands. I have a husband who thinks I'm beautiful when I wake up with puffy eyes and messy hair. And we are expecting our own baby in 3 months. I don't worry about what the baby will look like. I don't care if it has a beak nose or a flat nose or big ears. I just want it to be healthy. I want it to be kind. I want it to know it is loved before it is even born. Because I learned the hard way that you can buy a new face, but you can't buy a new heart. Mitchell wanted a legacy of beauty. He ended up with a legacy of lies. I wanted a life of truth. And I got it. It smells like yeast and vanilla and rain on a hot sidewalk. It smells like real life. And let me tell you, it tastes so much sweeter than revenge. That is my story. It's a reminder that the truth always surfaces, sometimes in the most unexpected ways, like on the face of a newborn baby. If you enjoyed this story of karma and finding self-worth, please give this video a thumbs up. And tell me in the comments, do you believe Mitchell and Candace deserved what they got, or do you feel sorry for them? I read every single comment. Thanks for listening, and remember, the most beautiful thing you can be is yourself. And so, this story leaves us with a powerful reminder: true beauty is not found in flawless appearances but in the authenticity of the heart. It teaches us that no amount of perfection can mask the cracks in our character or the truth of who we are. Mitchell and Candace's downfall was not their past, but their inability to accept it, a cautionary tale of how chasing superficial ideals can lead to emptiness and regret. In contrast, Valerie's journey shows us the strength of resilience and self-love. She refused to let betrayal define her, turning pain into purpose and rebuilding her life on a foundation of truth and integrity. Her story inspires us to embrace our imperfections, cherish our unique qualities, and recognize that our worth is not determined by others' opinions but by how we choose to live and love. What lessons did this story teach you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, or simply type good if it resonated with you. Let's celebrate the beauty of being unapologetically ourselves.